All right, let's hit the field.
All right.
Just wanted to talk, that's all.
The Super Bowl is right around the corner, and you know what that means. Baseball is next. In this episode, I'm joined by Yankees beat writer Max Goodman of NJ.com, and we'll cover 10 key over-unders, which could be crucial to the Yankees' chances of getting back to the playoffs. Next stop, spring training. This is NYY Recaps.
Welcome to Yankee Stadium.
Just when they thought I was out, they pull me back in.
All right. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Max Goodman. How is your winter going, sir?
It's good. Spending some valuable time with family, trying to keep the work flowing and take advantage of some time off. But it's been good. It's gone by pretty quickly. How about you?
Well, it's kind of been dragging here without a lot of Yankee news, not a lot of baseball news in general. You going down to Tampa soon?
Yes, of course. I will be there for a chunk of it. Definitely looking forward to that.
Sweet. So what's it like being down there? It's got to be like the best month of the year, 70 degrees in Tampa with, baseball that doesn't matter, filling up your whole day. That's got to be the best time of the year.
No, what I like about it most is I think the guys are just more accessible. Everyone's in a great mood. The weather's great. The games don't matter, like you said. And I think the vibes are just better at that time of the year. And for us, it's a good chance to, get to know some players better, the coaches, scouts, and execs that are going to be at the ballpark. So that's always been important for me as a young writer these last couple of years. So definitely looking forward to it for those reasons.
Well, I've enjoyed following your career as a Yankees beat writer so far and look forward to more great things this year. Looks like the chat is beginning to fill up. So let's go ahead and get started with our over-unders. And we're going to start with Nestor Cortes Jr. He had back-to-back years with a sub-3 ERA. He raised expectations. He was an all-star. But last season, he just couldn't keep the shoulder healthy. He made just 12 starts. So we're putting the over-under for Nestor at 20.5 starts this year. What you got?
You mentioned the biggest point of this for me, and that's the shoulder concerns. I'm just not sure if he's going to be able to go back to the kind of workload that he had the year before this. And that was his big breakout season, 28 starts, an all-star campaign for him. The Yankees could certainly use that from him because they need that depth in the bottom half of the rotation from him and Clark Schmidt, who, also has some workload questions in terms of what he's going to be capable of this year. But I have the under on this one. Maybe it'll end up being close, but to think of him having a full workload, I'm not sure if I can see that.
I'm also going to take the under, unfortunately. Look, shoulder issues concern me. If it was a groin like he'd had the previous year or a calf or something that kept him out, I'd be like, all right, well, maybe you can do some, calisthenics to get yourself in a position to be more durable. But once you start to have, as a pitcher, especially a pitcher with a smaller frame, shoulder issues, and you start to hear the words rotator cuff, to me, that's just a concern. I think he's going to be under. I think he's going to be about 17, 18 starts and probably pitch in the bullpen a little bit down the stretch if he's healthy. So let's move on to number 2. This is a guy we need big time this year to step up, and that is Anthony Volpe, year 2 of his career. He looked overmatched at times last year, but he also had some hot streaks. We need him to make more contact. I think the defense is going to be there. I think he answered questions about whether or not he can play shortstop by winning the Gold Glove. But you got to hit better than 209. So we're going to set the over-under at 235, which doesn't look sexy, but that's about a 20-point increase, roughly.
Right. I think there's just so much room for improvement for him because, like you said, there are quite a few stretches where he was completely overmatched against big league pitching. And, he is a youngster. He's a highly touted prospect, obviously, but there is going to be an adjustment period for him. So I do think that having one full season under his belt is going to help just in terms of being more familiar with some of the guys that he's facing, maybe a little bit less pressure now that he's hitting, let's say, consistently in the bottom half, if not the last spot in the order, which I think could be a home for him this year. So with that added comfort, maybe building on the speed and the defense that he has, getting more confident, I'm going to take the over, but not necessarily by too much here. it's just, you look at what he did in the minor leagues. He wasn't necessarily a 300 guy when you look at, double A and triple A. I do think that that's his ceiling, to be more of an average type of hitter, but he has to maybe stray away from the power approach, because I think that hurt him a little bit. This is just anecdotally, like, my opinion here. If he can, hit the ball the other way, focus more on bat to ball and getting on base from that 9 spot, he'll be invaluable for the offense, because then you turn it over, and if the top of the order is humming, then you're going to be firing on all cylinders.
I wholeheartedly agree.
I think the hit that we just saw from Volpe in the replay, where he's taking that ball to right field on a line drive, the Jeterian single, as John Sterling has dubbed it, I think that's what he needs to do more of this year. And I also want him to be more aggressive when he's actually on base. He hit .379 for a streak of about 3 weeks last year, but only made 2 stolen base attempts during that stretch. I think he's going to go over. A few weeks ago, I did a projection on Volpe, and I predicted 235. So I'm just going to take the 235 and some change, and we're going to go over on Anthony Volpe. And we'll take it. We'll sign up for it. All right, so the next one is somebody that everybody's interested to see play another full season, another full healthy season, and that is Aaron Judge. Big power numbers last year by mortal standards, 37 home runs. But before he injured his toe in Los Angeles, he was on pace for roughly 60 home runs. It was going to be like 58, 59 home runs roughly. The question is, and always will be, can he stay on the field? Freak injuries or not, injuries are injuries, and he has spent a lot of time on the injured list. Also, he turns 32 this year. There's been some guys who've regressed in their earlier 30s over the last few years. Giancarlo Stanton's bat speed dropped a little bit last year, had a little bit more trouble with the fastball. Not saying it's going to happen to Aaron Judge. I'm just using historical examples. So the question is, over under 44.5 home runs for Aaron Judge.
This one was pretty simple for me. I have the over. I don't sense any sort of regression anytime soon. It'll come down to just whether he gets hurt or not. And I don't think that what happened last year is a sign of his durability, right? That was just a complete fluke, what happened in right field. I've seen, maybe some fans are concerned about the fact that he's going to be in center more often this year, at least until Jasson Dominguez gets back, and we'll talk about that later. But I don't think that that'll be a detriment to him. He likes playing center. He's a good defensive center fielder, and it certainly seems like he's excited to be out there. So you hit it right on the head too. I mean, he was on a pace for another historic year when he got hurt, and 37 in 106 is crazy good. I mean, those are prodigious power numbers. So he keeps getting better. I think he'll be above 45. I don't know if he'll get to 50, but I think he'll have another really solid year.
I agree.
You son of a bitch.
I think he's going to go way over. I'm going to say 55 to 60, maybe not 62 plus, but I'll settle for 57. I'll take a 57 for me. I'll sign up for that right now. Show me where to sign. I'll sign up for that every day and twice a week on Sunday. What was interesting to me is first few years in the league, he had a lot of 2 home run games, but never could get that 3rd home run. And then last year he did it twice. What if he does it, even more 3 or 4 times this year? I mean, he's one of those guys that when he's locked in, he's just unstoppable. I think he's the best hitter in the game when he's locked in still to this day. So I am taking the over for Aaron Judge. And let's talk about another guy who is key to this lineup, and that is DJ LeMahieu, former batting champion, perennial 300 hitter. Hit just 243 last season, although he did bounce back and hit 273 in the second half. One thing I've noticed is that the past few years when DJ hits, seems like the whole lineup just functions better. More guys on base, more guys hitting. He sees a lot of pitches too when he's hitting well, so that helps out the guys around him. So over under 265 batting average for DJ LeMahieu.
When I think of the season he had last year, the first thing that comes to mind is that he was much better in the second half, and even just in the last couple of months, his numbers were dramatically better than they were early on. It seems like he's healthy, right? He's distanced himself from some of the other things that bothered him in the past. The toe comes to mind. But since that, MVP caliber season he had, the shortened season in 2020, He's had a 258 average these last couple of years, the last 3 years combined. So I don't know if has the potential to be that same batting champion, hit for average type player. Now, I commend you for the number that you came up with here, because I think this is maybe the sweet spot for him if he does have a bounce back season. I am going to go with the under, though, because the track record recently suggests that maybe that's like the ceiling for him. But he does have the potential to hit higher than that, right? And I do think that him being in the leadoff spot with Judge and Soto behind him in whatever order Boone and the Yankees choose, he's going to get a lot of pitches to hit. And if he can keep the ball in the air, line drives, not hit the ball on the ground every time, that's going to be key for him. And I think he'll set the tone, like you said.
I am also taking the under.
Son of a bitch!
I think 260, 255 probably. The reason that I'm not super optimistic is not because I think he's regressed to the point where he can't hit anymore, or that he's more like the guy from the first half. I just think as he gets older, he's been getting hurt a lot more. He's had a lot of nagging injuries, the toe and all sorts of other stuff. And if he's even able to play a full season, he's going to be dealing with something at his age. So I'm just kind of counting in that regression to the mean a little bit for DJ. But I think 260 at the top of that lineup with, let's say, 330, 340 on base percentage, maybe, I think you'll still sign up for it.
I also wonder after a while if Alex Verdugo and Gleyber Torres get some chances in the leadoff spot, because DJ at his best is really good with runners in scoring position, and they may need that in the middle of the order depending on how Rizzo and Stanton and other guys do perform this year. So if you want someone who has speed and maybe is playing really well, Gleyber was capable of being in the leadoff spot last year, and we'll see how Verdugo does in pinstripes. But Boone did mention those two guys. I think it was on Foul Territory, right? Or
yeah.
Something else this offseason. So maybe he mixes in a couple different faces in that spot, but we do know that he loves LeMahieu hitting leadoff, so I think he'll be there a lot.
You mentioned Verdugo. We should talk about him in another podcast, but I'm excited for him. I think that just getting out of Boston, where he felt like he didn't have a good relationship with the manager, and coming to Yankee Stadium in a contract year, we've seen guys benefit from that before. He's the type of guy that I think will play with a chip on his shoulder, and he could have a pretty good year. But we got to talk about Giancarlo, the other big fella in the lineup. 24 home runs last year, batted under 200, but went to Jenny Craig this winter, is looking very fabulous. We need him to come back and put up some decent home run numbers and basically stay on the field. Be nice to get better than 200 also, but over under 28.5 home runs for Giancarlo.
This one's tough. In a roundtable that I did at NJ.com with our Randy Miller, our beat writer, and Bob Clappish, our columnist, I said that he'd hit 30 in 2024. So I'm going to take the over and stick with what I wrote a while ago, but I'm not necessarily 100% confident in this. I'm curious to see if the leaner and lighter version of him can stay on the field and can catch up to pitching, because earlier we talked about Anthony Volpe being overmatched. Stanton looked completely lost at the plate quite a bit last year. So the only caveat is that when he's rolling, he can be the best hitter in the league, and out of nowhere he'll flip a switch and be just so streaky. And the metrics that he has, even with the career worst, dreadful, whatever you want to call it, season he had last year, his quality of contact when he was putting the bat on the ball, it was good, right? I mean, he can hit a missile out of nowhere and then catch fire. So I do think that he'll be able to be right around this number, and maybe 30 if he can stay on the field long enough. But I don't know how much higher he'll be able to take the batting average and the on-base percentage and those kinds of things. But if he's hitting fourth or fifth, I mean, the Yankees need that, because that's protecting Judge and Soto. You want to have someone in the middle of the lineup that's playing well to make sure those two guys get pitched to.
I have a friend who knows Giancarlo Stanton personally, and he told me in a text message the other day, Stanton is pissed off at himself. He's pissed off at how he's performed. And when I think about a guy who's won an MVP, who's hit 59 home runs, who's gotten himself into unbelievable shape his entire life, you don't get that way without having a competitive edge, right? Without having that like burning desire. And I think getting punched in the mouth last year, to borrow, Brian Cashman's phrase or Aaron Boone's phrase, I can't remember. I think is going to set him off this year. So I'm also taking the over. I'm going to say 35 home runs for Giancarlo. Out on a limb.
All right. Well, I think what you brought up is important because Stanton is incredibly accountable. He's one of the most accountable guys in that clubhouse. And I think back to what he said in Kansas City at the very end of the year, that he's going to reevaluate everything this offseason. And he seemed really pissed off, like you said. So, I mean, there's a lot at stake for him in terms of his reputation and with how much money he's making, the expectations for him to perform. And, he's a guy who probably will say that his time with the Yankees has been a failure so far because he hasn't lived up to the expectations of the player that the Yankees thought they were getting in, before 2018. So expectations are high from him, and he's a really important piece for this team.
And there's one other thing is that he also has supposedly reworked his swing a little bit at driveline baseball to get a better swing path. I don't know if that's going to help him lay off the down and away slider that he has trouble laying off of. But look, more contact from Giancarlo is going to mean more power, more production, just because he's so strong. The next one is kind of a interesting idea here. Jasson Dominguez. I believe he'll be playing center field and batting leadoff when the playoffs begin. That's my prediction. But coming back from Tommy John surgery, apparently he's making some real progress. Cashman said he's going to be almost a regular player in spring training. We've seen guys come back quicker and quicker from this. The Yankees' 81st game of the season is June 26th. So to play in 81 games, he's going to need to be back by mid to early June. Over under 81.5 games played for Jasson Dominguez.
I'll preface my answer by saying that I want this to be the over because I'm really excited to see how he does handle it's not going to be a first full season because no matter when he does come back, he's going to miss some time. But to get away from the small sample of the 8 games and just how good he was for that 1 week, to see him face pitching week in and week out. I'm going to take the under. I think it's a little bit of a conservative answer, but I just don't think that the Yankees should rush him. I don't think that they will, but I think that they should err on the side of caution even more than maybe the excitement about how he's doing right now, just because he is only 20. I think his birthday is like next week. So he is only 21 this year. And yes, he is going to be back at some point this summer, but we don't really know when that's going to be. And it doesn't make sense with how much he's going to factor into this equation for years and years, for them to rush him back, and any sort of risk wouldn't be worth it, right? Because they do have all of the upgrades that they made in the outfield too. As much as he, in their best version of their lineup down the stretch, I think that he's in center field, or at least he's in there in some way. Right now, you have Trent Grisham as a very capable fourth outfielder who's a tremendous defender, and I think he's going to get a lot of playing time early on. I don't think Stanton will necessarily play too much outfield defensively, but he's, I guess, in that conversation too. So they address that need by getting Verdugo and Soto and Grisham. So in a sense, they don't need to rush him back, but maybe if they get hit by injuries, then this whole conversation changes.
Yeah, it seems like every year guys go down. So, I mean, you never know what it's going to shake out. But I'm also going to take the under, but I think about 75 games played, I would still sign up for it. And I still think he's going to be a great player. And I still think that when the playoffs come around, he's going to be at the top of the lineup as a switch hitter hitting in front of Juan Soto. And I think there's something to be said for him learning from Soto. We've already seen that Dominguez has a very good command of the strike zone, takes those close pitches, spits on those pitches that are just outside. And I think hitting alongside Juan Soto for a few months could do wonders for him in his development. We're going to move right along here to Anthony Rizzo. A lot of people forget he was off to a really good start last year before he suffered that undiagnosed concussion and then suffered from post-concussion syndrome for a couple of months. Over under here is 23.5 home runs for Anthony Rizzo, which I think will be a layup if healthy. What do you think?
I'm with you. I mean, he had 11 homers at the time when he had that collision with Tatis right at the very end of May, and he hit 1 homer the rest of the entire season. Arguably, he shouldn't have been playing for a lot of that time. I think this is a different conversation than like what happened with Giancarlo Stanton, where it was more of a glaring decline and more of a concern, maybe a little bit of the injury stuff going on too. It seems like Rizzo is back to being at full strength and healthy. I mean, we'll hear from him again in spring training soon, but everyone that we've spoken to this offseason has seemed pretty confident about where he's at. Even going back to last fall, saying that he's been working at Yankee Stadium and he was potentially even ready to go at the very end of the regular season. So I agree. I think that we can smash the over here. His swing is just so tailor-made for Yankee Stadium. I mean, he sneaks a lot of homers out to right, even when he's not squaring balls up too. And like we've talked about a little bit, the middle of the order is so important. And if he's going to be hitting fourth, if Judge is third, I think we could see Rizzo hitting fourth because they like the lefty-righty trade-off. So many RBI opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even more of an influence for him to put the ball in the air. And then a couple balls are going to sneak out. If he's playing at Yankee Stadium half the season, he'll get by this number for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. And hitting with 2 400 on base guys in front of him, like you said, a lot of RBIs. So maybe take the over on 100 RBIs too. All right, next is a guy who absolutely needs to have a bounce back year, and that is Carlos Rodon. Also went to Jenny Craig this winter. Just 6.85 ERA last year. Not even really much to say. Just awful. Over under 4 ERA from Carlos Rodon.
I'm going to take the under. I do think that it's a little safer to bet on a bounce back from him. And maybe I'm crazy. I know a lot of people have been even lower on Rodon after the season that he had compared to Cortes or any of the other injury-prone guys that we've talked about. Having an ERA that was close to 7 is just such an abomination and probably an anomaly in the sense that even if he has a down year again this year, I don't think he'll be anywhere near that number. He never really had a chance to gather himself. I mean, missing the first half of the year, coming back with all the expectations and maybe still feeling some residual injury stuff at the time when he was, considered healthy and pitching again. He was just so good those first couple of years before the Yankees signed him, right? I mean, are we really just thinking that for the next 5 years, the rest of his contract, he's not going to be a mid to top of the rotation type of pitcher? So you also talk about being pissed off. I mean, he seemed like he was extremely motivated at the end of the year and ready to work hard this offseason. So I'm going to take the under. I don't think he's going to, set the world on fire and win a Cy Young or anything like that. But if he can be a solid number 3, maybe Stroman ends up being the number 2 behind Cole. That's all they can really ask for. And hopefully he's able to build some momentum as the season goes by.
I'm going to take the over. And I'm doing that just because we've agreed on everything, and I don't think it's good form. It was not planned this way. I pre-did all of mine, and I think Max said it was a game time decision for a lot of them. So I'm going to take the over, but let's just call it 4.01. I think he's going to do well, but again, I think he's going to pitch more like a number 3. To me, the thing that concerned me most was in the final start of the season, his velocity was down. And with a back injury, and you start to lose velocity, and roughly that was his mid-season point, he should be at, a higher velocity. I just did not feel good about what I saw from him. So I'm going to take over, but I don't think he's going to completely collapse as a lot of people do. Next is the one a lot of people have been waiting for, the new guy, Mr. Juan Soto. Popped a career-best 35 home runs last season, and he is still just 25 years old, so you'd expect him to be even stronger. And this is a contract year, playing in a left-handed, hitter-friendly ballpark. Over under 37.5 home runs, which would be 2.5 more than his career high.
As much as he is a lefty slugger and the short porch is there, I don't necessarily think this is going to be a huge home run season for Soto. And I'd also imagine that he's particularly excited about just how big left center is at Yankee Stadium, because he can hit the ball the other way consistently and with power also, but just shooting line drives into the gap is his specialty. Really excited to watch him play every day, because we've all heard of the phenom that he is, but to get a chance to watch it and see the intricacies and hear from him about his approach at the plate is going to be very exciting. I'm going to take the under. But I do think that he's going to have a career year. The average is going to be tremendous. The OPS is going to be any metric that you want to throw out there. I just don't think he's going to sell out for pitches and try to pull them. I think he's going to stick to his approach because that approach has worked for him. And as much as it is a career year, I don't think that he's going to view the home run number as something that he needs to get a historic contract, because he's going to get it no matter what, short of a catastrophic season, which isn't going to happen. So, no matter where he's hitting in the lineup, so long as he plays a full season, he'll be close to it. Like, I could see him hit 35 again, but I don't think it'll be a 40 homer season or anything like that.
And once again, we did not plan this, but we are in lockstep, and a lot of people in the chat also in lockstep. He hits the ball to left center a lot, like you said, and it's 400 feet to left center field. I think he's going to increase his doubles numbers. I think he could potentially have a career best in doubles, but he's not a guy who pulls the ball a ton. And also in front of Judge, I think he's going to be even more content to take the walk if he really is hitting in front of Aaron Judge, because think of how many RBIs Aaron Judge is going to have if he hits 60 home runs or close to it with Juan Soto and his 430, 440 on base percentage in front of it. You're talking about, 140, 150 runs batted in potentially for Aaron Judge. So I'm going to take the under on Juan Soto, but again, 35-ish roughly, like you said. So we are in lockstep. And the final one is the Yankees. Over under 93.5 wins. Won 82 games last year. So far they added Soto, Verdugo, Stroman. Presumably we'll have the healthy Aaron Judge, but you never know. Over under.
This was a big game time decision for me. I didn't really prep too much on this one. I'm going to take the under. I don't think that they did enough to necessarily jump, 15 wins. And I think there are just so many what ifs as we look at this team right now. So much has to go right for them to have that kind of season. It's in there, right? I mean, on paper, if everybody has a bounce back season and the veterans that we've talked about, the guys that didn't have a good year last year, if Wells and Volpe and all the youngsters, Will Warren, if they all have breakout seasons and take steps forward, that would help. If the depth in the bullpen, if the Yankees find some more hidden gems there, Wandy Peralta chooses the Padres today. I don't know how much more they could have done. I mean, they already have a payroll that's over $300 million, so they have been active this winter. It's not like they passed on everybody and had a failure of an offseason. But I see them in second behind the Orioles. I think that if they get hit by adversity again, I highly doubt that it'll be to the extent that it was last year, but then you start to see them fall back a little bit in the division. We could talk about the division another day. The other teams, other than the Orioles, really haven't solidified themselves as a threat. Even Baltimore hasn't done too much this winter. So, maybe they'll be right around 90 wins or scratching at this 93.5, but I have them at the under right now. I think too much has to go right for them to have a season that's much better than that number.
Frankie Baseball says he's the most nihilistic Yankees fan on the internet, and he says over. And I'm going to agree with Frankie here. I'm going to take the over. I think that just a healthy Aaron Judge, possibly a healthy Giancarlo Stanton. I just think everything went wrong last year. Luis Severino couldn't get anybody out all year long. Rodon got hurt. Now, I mean, it's possible other guys take a step back. Maybe Garrett Cole doesn't have a Cy Young caliber season this year. Or, maybe Gleyber Torres is more the guy who hit 9 home runs than the guy who hit 25 the last couple of years. But I do think that having so many guys in their contract year, Soto, Torres, Verdugo, having 3, premier players in contract years is going to keep them on the field and at their highest performance. And, Judge being healthy, I think adds 4 or 5 wins by himself. Let's say 96 wins for the Yankees, which I will take. So the over. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Max Goodman. Appreciate you taking the time, Max. Any final thoughts on the Yankees this year?
No, man. I think all I can say, and I meant to bring this up with Rodon specifically, but with everybody, I think this spring is just really important for this team overall. There are a lot of guys coming off down years. Like you said, a lot of contract year folks that want to get off on the right foot. I mean, if they have a really awful month of April, I mean, it might, you know, suck the wind out of their sails and hurt them in terms. I know it's a long season, right? It's not a sprint, but there are just a lot of players on that roster that I think need to get off to a hot start, or at the very least stay healthy and just perform adequately and start to build momentum. If they have a couple more injuries in spring training like they did last year, that is just the worst possible scenario for this team. Because what you said, 96 wins, I mean, it's in there, right? If everybody plays to their potential, every team is going to have injuries, but they do seemingly have enough to withstand it if their young talent steps up and performs. But I don't know. It's have we ever gone into a season with so many question marks and what ifs, and it's really hard to be confident about anything.
Well, I mean, if you look at the range of possibilities, I mean, I could see the Yankees finishing under 500, and I could see them winning 100 games. Like, it's weird. Yeah. There's not many seasons like that because just the injuries, right? I mean, they've had so many injuries. It's possible that Stanton and Rodon and Cortes all get hurt again. If Garrett Cole or Aaron Judge gets hurt, I mean, the whole season could be lost. But if everybody stays healthy, this team on paper, and I know the game is not played on paper, it could be really, really good. All right, so thanks again to Max Goodman. Max is going to be back with us often throughout the season. We're shooting for a couple of times per month, and we'll talk about kind of the pressing topics, and we'll fire that back up, right before the season starts, and then carry it on through the entire year. So thanks to everybody in the chat, and we will see you next time.